Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on End the System. And I'll also go ahead and cover the Scandinavian model. So there is a group of people, and I'm not even specifically talking about my channel, just this group, in this overall, generally in the world, whatever, that they've suffered from the court system's rulings, determinations, etc., whether it's child support or the fact that they can't see their kids whenever they want to. They feel that they've suffered, and their answer is to just end the system. This isn't going to work, and here's why. First off, there's people on the other side of that coin. People like me who had an ex who didn't use the system to deprive me of custody, who didn't use the system to hurt me and our son. She used anything but the system to do that. She just decided she was going to do what she wanted to do, and if I didn't like it, too bad. And I had to use the system to protect our son. So there's people on the other side of the coin who have an ex who is not dragging them through the mud in the courts, who's dragging them through the mud outside of the courts, who's not using a judge's order to deprive them of visitation, who's just depriving them of visitation just because they feel like it. And I think sometimes you'll get a flippant response from this other side of, oh, we'll just make them agree. Just talk to them, work it out. You can't work it out with a high conflict text. Some of the more radical people will say that you can just show up and just snatch your kids because they're being unreasonable. So, I mean, it's sometimes with some of them, it just evolves into lawlessness and just total chaos. I've said before that when you fight fire with fire, all you're going to do is burn the kids twice as bad. Who knows if you're going to win doing it, but for sure, your kids are going to be twice as damaged, if not more. The solution to the problem is the court system. If there's problems with the court system, the solution is to fix those specific problems, not to just burn the whole system down. One thing that I really struggle with is it seems to me like the people who think that the system should be dismantled aren't thinking about the next step. They're not thinking about what else could a crazy ex do to hurt the kids. They're just angry with the system and they're not thinking at all. Um, this kind of pushes me into the Scandinavian model because one of the more reasonable arguments is, well, I don't think the system should be gone and not replaced. I just think we should replace it with the Scandinavian model. And the Scandinavian model does not involve judges and it does not involve attorneys. It involves social workers. And then you just sit down with your ex and you just work things out. It's way cheaper. And this is great for people who are not high conflict exes. As I've described and defined in my video Deserve Victory, a high conflict ex needs the conflict. It's an existential part of who they are. They've defined their identity by the conflict. This is not a person who's going to sit down and work things out with you. This is a person who's going to manipulate whatever it is that they can to create conflict. And the only way to deal with a high conflict ex is through the use of force, legal force. When they're going nuts at appointments to embarrass you and the child, you need an order from the court saying they can't go to appointments anymore. When they're letting your kid's teeth rot because they want to hurt you, they know that your kid going through five crowns and 2 extractions is painful for you, and they do it on purpose, or because they're neglectful, maybe they're an addict. You don't need to work with that person. You need to have the child in your custody most of the time. When you have an ex who's, I mean, it can get much worse than this. And there's just certain people who are not acting in good faith. And that's the problem with the Scandinavian model. It only works when both sides are acting in good faith. Good faith is just, I'm trying my hardest, and if I make a mistake, I'll try to fix it. That's not, for some reason, it seems to me that some people think that that is the worst possible scenario. That you have an ex who makes mistakes all over the place. They're angry, they're vengeful, they're mad, but with some help and therapy, they can work through it. That's not the worst. That's not. A high conflict ex is much worse than that, especially if they're personality disordered, because they're not making mistakes in the sense that, oops, I tried to do the right thing, but I messed up. They're deliberately trying to damage you and the child. It's an objective, it's a goal. And they, as I mentioned, they can't actually let the conflict end because they have defined themselves according to the conflict. They have gotten attention and adoration from friends and family based on the conflict. they have a vision of themselves as either a victim or a heroic savior of the child, and this is who they become, the conflict. So to ask them to agree with you and to let the conflict die is to ask them to basically die and and to reinvent themselves anew. And it's not realistic at all. And that's only in the sense of if they're just a really jealous, immature, emotionally immature person. In the sense of a personality disordered mental health issue style situation, it's much worse and much scarier. So that kind of system doesn't work for that kind of X. And I've seen some videos on the Scandinavian model, and I've talked to some people about it, and I won't mention any names, but I've heard a few different things from the people who've gone through it, from some of the people in those countries. I guess the one that's on my mind most right now is that they kind of treat both sides like little kids. Like you're both little kids, and you just need to set aside your differences and work together. And anyone who's been in a high conflict child custody case, that's like nails on a chalkboard, because everyone says that. The judges, the attorneys, sometimes friends and family, they say, well, maybe you can just give this, or maybe you can just give a little in this area. And it's nails on a chalkboard to us, because we have been doing everything that we can. We have been giving inch after inch after inch. We have been surrendering over and over and over and over again. And not only does it not stop, but it gets worse. The other side exploits that as a weakness, and they try and take more from you. They try and hurt you more. They get emboldened and invigorated by you giving way or capitulating. So it's just not the right approach for high conflict cases at all. I've mentioned it before, the only thing you can really do in a high conflict case is pinpoint who the abuser is and curtail that abuser's rights as much as you possibly can, up to and including termination of parental rights if that's what you have to do. It's a last resort, but with some of them, that's the only thing that works. This is how these cases have to be dealt with, because otherwise the kids are going to be abused and abused and abused and abused into oblivion. And who knows, the kids may end up having mental health issues by the time they enter adulthood. So I hope that I sort of got my opinion across in this video. And mainly I was trying to explain why I just can't get behind that whole end the system or the whole Scandinavian model. I just can't get behind any of that, because in my personal experience, my ex would have had a field day with that system. An absolute field day. And things would have been so much worse. As bad as it was to deal with attorneys and 2 different judges and 7 different appeals, at least I was able to accomplish something. At least I was able to ultimately get our son the protection that he needed. Yes, it took a tremendous amount of work, but at least it was possible. With the Scandinavian model, it's flat out impossible. You can't reach that outcome. So you're basically, it's a sentence for however many years until your child enters adulthood, and maybe even more if your child suffers mental health issues. It's no hope. You're in damage control mode for the whole time, and I think it's tragic. I think it's a tragedy that these systems are so naive to the reality of just how bad some of these cases can get. It's just it astounds me, honestly. So and that's the Scandinavian model. The whole abolish the family court system is even more insane to me, because it's like, who's going to decide who gets what? It's like this weird idea that everyone's going to be reasonable and your ex is going to come to the table and be fair just because there's no court system around. My ex sure as heck would have not done that at all. She decided I was an abusive, bad father and I was never going to see my son. And that was it. That's what she decided, and there was no changing her mind. So um, anyway, I'm not going to get torn or pulled down that rabbit hole, that argument. I've told you how far and radical that can get, and how far and radical the responses to that can get. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video. And if anyone else here is on my side of that coin, where their ex isn't using the court system to hurt them, their ex is just deciding that they just can't see their kids or whatever, and they have to use the court system to get some time with their kids. That would be great to see in the comments below. We have a lot of noise from the other side that says the system is horrible and the attorneys are jerks and they're stealing on all our money and the judge won't let me see my kids. There's a lot of noise coming from that side, but I know that there are other parents out there like me who had an ex that didn't use the system, and the victim parent had to go and use the system to get some rights. Like, I had to get the system to help me. So it would be nice to see if there's people on that side of the coin. Post in the comments below. Let me know that I'm not alone on this. So with that, I'll go ahead and see you guys next time.